All right, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Lifting Cues podcast. I know it's been a while, but a lot has happened since the last episode. So I just want to catch you up on everything that's happened. This is going to be the first episode brought to you by Fifth Power Fitness, which is the online coaching company that I founded, which has been the biggest reason probably for the hiatus from the podcast. Just setting up a business, getting started. I had a lot of responsibilities that I didn't previously have, finding the time to get this podcast back in and be able to do it again. I'm really excited to bring it back with a ton of new content, not just the podcast, but everything that will come from it. Make sure that you go to fifthpowerfitness.com, check out the website, sign up for free guides, my newsletter, which will come out every Friday, being Fifth Power Fridays. I know, corny, but if you know me, that's the way we roll around here. I'm very excited to bring you guys more content consistently every week and provide as much value as possible. One of the biggest things with Fifth Power Fitness that I wanted to do was be able to bring you guys as much value as I possibly can outside of the constraints of anybody else. It's all me. I'm very excited to do that and to bring back the Lifting Cues podcast to answer all of your lifting cues. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Quinto Hood, aka Coach Q, owner, founder of Fifth Power Fitness. I'm an online fitness coach. I also coach in person. I live here in Erie, Pennsylvania. I've been a lifter for more than half my life now. It's been about 20 years from the age of 13 to now 33. Just got into competitive powerlifting here about a year or so ago. So that's a big focus for me personally. I just want to use all of that knowledge that I have from my 20 years of lifting and working with clients the past 3, 4 years, helping hundreds of people figure out their training, figure out their nutrition, do that for you as well here on the Lifting Cues podcast, giving you all of the cues that you need to take your fitness to the next level, whatever that may be, getting on the platform, getting on the stage, being the most jacked parent at school, whatever it might be. So that's what we're here to do. We're going to set this up a little bit differently, especially this episode. This episode's going to be a recap of where I've been, what's been going on, and what everything looks like going forward. Make sure you sign up for that newsletter. The newsletter that comes out every Friday will detail all of these things. So you will have it in writing. It will be slightly different perspectives, but I'm really excited to bring that to you guys every single week. So without further ado, let's get started. Man, so much has happened since October of 2024, which was the last time that I recorded a podcast. I've done 2 powerlifting meets since then, which have both gone extremely well. In November, I did a meet in Virginia. It was the World Championship meet for the Raw Powerlifting Federation, which was pretty cool. Never had that kind of opportunity and was able to go out and win, which was really sweet. But more than that, powerlifting for me is not necessarily about winning so much as what I do personally in my own personal growth. Am I getting better each and every time that I get out there? That was really the biggest focus. And I went out and I hit a PR on squat, a really big one. I went from 485 on the platform to 518 on the platform. So that was April to November. So about 6 months. Really fun. Super excited about that. With deadlift, I also hit 585 on the platform, which was a huge platform PR. Most I had ever done. Most I did in the last meet was like 545, maybe 535, 545. So it was a really big jump there. I've made tremendous strides on my squat and deadlift, which has been a lot of fun. I pulled 600 that day, got it up, but didn't quite count. So hold that thought for a second. Bench press, I hit a small PR. My shoulder was still really giving me trouble at that point. So that was a tough sort of thing. After that meet, I committed to, all right, what are the things that I need to get better at? This is the biggest thing as you get more advanced in your training. What are the things you need to get better at whatever, your end goal is? What are all of the things you need to put together? So for me, biggest things were I really want to keep increasing my squat, and one thing that's holding me back was my core. So I built out kind of my program for the off season. I hadn't planned on competing until April of this year. So I figured I'd have 8 to 12 weeks of this off season program and then give myself 8 to 12 weeks of a full powerlifting program. So I start out with a bunch of front squats. I really start out front squatting, again, trying to strengthen that core, strengthen my quads so that I could drive out of the hole better instead of shooting my hips up. Those two things were really big. I did 4 weeks of front squats and then 4 weeks of safety bar squats. I use the safety bar for front squats, put it on the front of me because it's much easier. I don't have to use, wrist, shoulder mobility just because mine's not that good right now. And I didn't have the time to put in to make it better. So I figured I need to just load this heavier so that I can strengthen what I want to strengthen. So that was my thought process. If I don't need wrist and shoulder mobility to get into that front rack position, I'm not an Olympic weightlifter. So I'll just do what works for me best. So front squatting with the safety bar backwards really worked well for me. And then heavy safety bar squats as well. Focusing in the 3 to 5 rep range on these for most of my working sets, some sets of 6 to 8. With the core and holding that position, the longer you have to hold it and increase that time under tension, increase the volume, it just helps build that back up. So that was my focus strength wise, was how do I bring up those weak points and focus on that? I didn't have to barbell back squat because at this point I am proficient at barbell back squat. Very clearly, I've been able to make gains. I'm not going to forget how to barbell back squat. I didn't include it because I was squatting so heavy with those. I didn't want to overly fatigue myself. So anyway, it worked out really, really well. I ended up getting signed up for a meet just last week at the Arnold Classic, which was freaking awesome. But I did it on short notice. So it was like 5 weeks out. I got an invite to go to this event and compete. Wasn't too bad. I was like, okay, I only have 4 weeks. I had actually just broken my big toe. So that was a little bit of a question mark. I was like, am I going to be able to train the way I want to for this? That worked out pretty well, but it showed me that the work that I did leading up, working on those weak points, as soon as I went back into barbell back squat, it felt incredible. I was able to start just crushing weights. First time I barbell back squatted, I hit 495 for a really easy single. And that's like, that hasn't happened for me in a really long time. They're never that easy. So I was like, okay, I'm in a good spot. And then I was able to kind of just run through my program, which I'll lay out for you guys a little bit. That was really exciting. The other things I was focusing on in that off season were making my shoulder healthy again, because that's been a huge issue over and over again for me on the bench press. So I was like, let me figure that out. Let me make sure my shoulder is in a good spot. So I did a ton of work on that. A lot of rotational stuff, all kinds of things I could think of. Check out my Instagram. It has some of the details of it. If you want to know more, please send me a message. I can give you my shoulder routine. It's not going to sound super interesting if I give it to you right now, but that was kind of what I was focusing on there. And again, got to the point where I was bench pressing without pain by this next meet. That was freaking sweet. By the time I got about 8 weeks in, when I started the powerlifting block 4 weeks out from this most recent competition, I was like, oh, I'm benching without pain. I was like, I think I can do, finally PR this lift. I've failed 315, technically 314 on the platform twice now. So this was the meet. I was like, I'm going to do it. And really ended up working out, which, like I said, I'll go over in a minute. And then biggest thing for deadlift was just not failing 600 again. How do I make sure that I don't fail 600? Biggest things were, again, really strengthening the core, strengthening my back. Just because of the way that I deadlift, my back gets really involved at the end. So I just didn't want to shoot my hips through too hard and not have any drive left at the end. I needed to strengthen my back so that I could stay tight and stay over the bar. The front squats and the safety bar squats really helped. 2 other things that really helped were stiff leg deadlifts. So you keep your legs basically straight and just pull it off the floor. I was able to get to 495 for one of those, which was really cool. So without bending your knees at all. So really no quad drive. So it's all posterior. And that really helps strengthen the hamstrings, glutes, and low back, and helps you stay over the bar. Another one was good mornings. Very similar, but even more stress on the core and back. That really, really helps you out. And then heavy like Pendlay rows. So strengthening the upper back, the lats, the lower back to be able to stay over the bar for as long as possible. That keeps your hips back so that you're able to keep driving your glutes through. If your shoulders get behind the bar, you have no more leverage. Your hips are going to come through really hard. and you're going to have nowhere left to contract. Those were the focuses on strength in the off season. Then it was like, okay, I signed up for this meet. I got 4 weeks to train. Let me see how much stronger I got. So when I built out kind of a 4-week program, now granted, this was a strong lifting event. So it's not just squat, bench, and deadlift. It was overhead press, weighted chin up, and hip thrust as well. I guess shout out to Brett Contreras for putting the hip thrust in there. They partnered with him to do this event. This is kind of like his baby. So obviously the hip thrust had to be involved. I had 4 weeks to train. So what did I do? I set up a training block that was 4 or 5 days a week. Let me make sure that I can get in all of the work that I need. So I like to do 2 squat days, 2 deadlift days, and 2 bench days at least, usually about 3 bench days. Make sure that I get enough work in with the main competition lift and a secondary lift. So that's how I built the program. And then I add in a work day and an accessory day for those other 3 lifts as well. So let me show you kind of how that broke out. First day was squat and bench, competition style. I started off with a top set of 3, 2 back off sets of 4, around 85%, trying to be in that 6 or 7 RPE, heavy but not overly fatiguing. Dropped the weight by about 10% for those 2 sets of 4. And then I did the same thing for bench, competition style. My accessory movements were like belt squat to overload the legs, but not the spine, which is really good for fatigue. And then some bench press or dumbbell bench press and chin ups for volume. That was my volume day of chin ups, doing as many as I possibly could with body weight just to build that out. Next day would be deadlift. And I included, it normally would be deadlift and a second bench day. It was deadlift, competition, overhead press, same setup, 1 set of 3, 2 sets of 4. Again, 6 or 7 RPE. I'm not really worried about going near my max, especially on these first weeks, just because I knew I could be proficient as long as I was challenging myself. I did those 2 lifts with some accessory movements. Next day was secondary squat, which was pause squats. I did heavy hip thrust with 1 set of 3, 2 sets of 4. The pause squats, those secondary days, I started out with 2 sets of 5, and then I would drop it down to 3 sets of 3. So doing more volume on those, because what you're working when you work like a pause squat or a pause deadlift or a spoto press or a pause bench press is you're really working, being able to stay in that form. So you need more volume to be able to force your body to hold that form for a longer period of time, because that is going to make you stronger on those max reps to be able to hold that form as well as you can. So that's what I was really focused on with those secondary days. Then I did hip thrust, and the day that was accessory deadlift, pause deadlifts, a spoto press or close grip pause bench, something along those lines. And then my heavy chin up day would be that day as well. So I was able to get heavy work in for all of those. If I had time and energy, I would do some accessory work, but with that many heavy lifts, it was pretty difficult. I said, this is 4 weeks. I can do it. Each week, that top set went down by 1. It was 1 set of 2. Week 3 was 1 set of 1. And then kind of my taper week into the event, making sure that I was as strong as possible. One of the biggest things I want to point out is I didn't go anywhere close to failing a rep at any point during this training. So there was never a weight that I put on the bar that I didn't think I could do. I squatted 505 for my heaviest single in training. I deadlifted 585 for my heaviest single in training, and I benched only 315 for my heaviest single in training. Those weren't my goals for the platform. That had nothing to do with my goals for the platform. I knew I was going to go heavier than that, but I knew that I didn't have to go that heavy. Those max effort attempts, they take more out of you than you think. It is not just that day. It can be almost a week after before you're back to where you want to be. And we don't get better at strength by failing reps. I don't care what anybody says. I know it is load dependent. Strength needs that challenging weight to be able to continue to adapt and get stronger, but that doesn't mean I should be failing reps. I want to do challenging but clean reps. I'm building those motor skills under load. I'm building those neurological connections to be able to handle load, complete them with the proper form, transfer force appropriately. I don't learn that by failing and doing shitty reps. I want to do clean, good reps that will help me build the proficiency in the movement that I need. I can focus on building muscle size with some of my back off sets. Maybe that gets a little bit more intense, or the accessory work. I'm able to push the intensity a little bit with more stable exercises, more isolation exercises, so that I'm able to recover and still build the muscle that I need, because increase in muscle mass is going to increase muscular force, which increases strength potential. But I don't need to do that with 105% of my max every time I go in the gym. You don't have to hit the weight in the gym that you were going to hit on test day. Trust me, you do not. I hit 505 for my heaviest single in training. I hit 525 on the platform in competitions. That was a 20-pound jump. I tapered down, felt fresh that day, was ready to go that week. I hit 315 in training. My goal was to hit heavier than that on bench in the meet. I hit 325. Hit 585 for deadlift, hit a 600-pound deadlift in competition. So you don't have to hit the weight that you're gonna hit. You don't have to hit heavier. Sometimes it can be good for confidence, but make sure you're doing that far enough away from competition. It shouldn't be in your peak training block. So in that 12 to 8 weeks out, we shouldn't ever intend on failing a rep. If we fail a rep in that time frame, something's gone terribly wrong with our recovery, or you just messed up the lift. But none of the weights that you put on the bar should be anywhere close. So using things like RPE to make sure that, you're built, as you're building up, how does this feel today? Am I going to be able to hit the RPE that I want and progress from last week? Percentage-based training can actually be useful to give you a baseline for where you're at. If you're hitting 85% for 3 and it feels less than an RPE 7, like, oh, great, I can bump up and I know I'm a little bit stronger, but it doesn't mean you're getting weaker if you're not doing max loads. The biggest thing I'd want to focus on is, what is the intention of your training? What are you looking to do on the platform? And what do you have to actually do to get there feeling good and ready to go? I think I set this last program up really well. I picked my weights for the meet really well. And that was, freaking awesome. And I made big jump from, November to now. I hit 518 in November on squat, 525 on squat. So a nice jump in a couple months. I mean, once you get up into this level of strength, these are the heaviest lifts I've ever done. Making a 7-pound jump is huge. So that was really exciting. Finally breaking through that 315 barrier on bench. Like, I did 303 in November and now just did 325. So that was a big 20-pound jump on bench. I finally was able to get there healthy and broke through. And then with deadlift, being able to come back and pull that 600 really meant a lot to me. Being able to finish that lift showed me that all of the things I did to strengthen my core and back really paid off in that moment, to be able to pull that 600-pound lift, to come out with a 9 for 9, 3 PR kind of dream powerlifting meet, which was freaking sick. I'm very proud, and it was a lot of fun. It really gives me the confidence that I can program for strength incredibly well, at least in, my mind, that I've kind of figured out, I think, the formula for how to train for strength and maximize my strength on a certain day. There's a difference between just getting stronger and being able to express that maximum strength on a given day. If you go into the gym and say, I'm going to test my 1 rep max today, what did you do leading up to that? Because even if you got stronger, if we didn't set up the training properly, that on that day you could maximally express your strength. Because if you're never able to fully maximize your strength, we're never going to know how strong we really are and how strong we've truly gotten. You can make progress, progressive overload in the gym. Download my free ebook on my website, fifthpowerfitness.com. You can download my progressive overload ebook to figure out all of these intensity things that I've been mentioning and different techniques of how to strengthen different things, doing, primary versus secondary exercises with different goals. Like, all the progression methods you could ever want to make sure that you break plateaus, make sure you continue to get stronger. They're all in there. So download that. But we can do progressive overload all we want, and we will be getting stronger, but we need to make sure that we can maximize that strength on a given day. And that's the most important piece of strength training and strength testing, is knowing how strong we are and being able to maximize it on that given day. So those taper weeks, how you set up your attempts, how you set up your buildups, how you do everything is important for that. So I was able to master that, and I'm looking forward to bringing you guys much more in that strength realm so that you guys can see exactly how it goes. So the meet was great for the beginning of it. And then it came to that second half. There were those other 3 lifts, and it was overhead press. I don't really love overhead press for strength purposes. I've never really trained it, so I only had a few weeks with different shoulder issues. I ended up getting an elbow issue, which I thought was tendonitis. Overhead press was just hard. And like this meet, I'd never done a meet like this before where there were 6 lifts, 3 attempts per lift. I had just PR'd and given everything to squat, bench, and deadlift. And I was absolutely exhausted by the end of it. So we went in, did the overhead press. I don't even remember what I got. I failed like 203. I think I did like 185 or something close to that, or 175. It was somewhere around there. I hate grinding that lift. It's so difficult. And it's just something that I hadn't practiced enough. And I think that's what it really comes down to. I wasn't proficient at that lift, so I couldn't maximize my strength. I think I'm stronger than what I lifted, but I just didn't have the time to train it as heavy as I needed to. Like I said, I always do overhead press for reps. It's something that I use to strengthen my shoulder for bench press. So I like the overhead press. I like using it. I do it often, but just not for strength. It just goes to show that how you maximize that strength and how you train for it really determines the outcome that you're going to get. So then anyway, it comes to the weighted chin up, and I do the first one. I miss the commands. It was super easy. It was like 50 pounds, bump it up to 75 pounds, around, do that super easy, no problems at all. Last one, 104 pounds. I tear my bicep about a quarter of the way up. So yeah, that's a tough break. And that's kind of where I want to go with the future of, what things look like is, what do you do when you get injured? It's a very strange feeling. I've been seriously injured twice in my life. I tore my ACL when I was 18, and now I suspect that I've torn my bicep. When you suffer one of these injuries, it's a very weird thing. It's like, it's almost an immediate thing of like, my life and my outlook on things has completely changed forever. Like, you think about it. I went from having the best powerlifting meet of my life and being in the most confident rhythm with my strength training, consistently making strength gains, setting big goals. And in that split second of hanging from that bar and pulling myself a few inches up, my life has fundamentally changed. Now, I don't want to make this out to be the most life-threatening injury. I've seen much worse injuries, but from that mental perspective, there is now something that I have to address immediately. It may require me to have surgery. It's likely going to, but it's in that split second that everything has now changed. I'm not thinking about what my next deadlift PR is going to be. I'm not thinking about, I just hit that bench PR. I was excited to keep going. I'm not thinking about that right now. My intention has changed. My mindset has to change. And it had to change in a split second. And I've thought about that moment over and over again. What if I just did less weight on that? Or what if I just said, you know what, I'll skip the last one. I'm good on that. Like, I can second guess myself all day, but the reality of it is, this is my situation. I have to deal with it. I have to make the most of it. So that is my intention. And basically what I'm getting at is, my intention now is, how do I get back to the healthiest level that I possibly can? So right now I'm focusing on getting this arm taken care of, talking to doctors, getting my MRI, all that kind of stuff. Let me figure out the best thing to do for this arm. Once I get to that point, I will set new goals from there. I'll see where I'm at and see what happens. The biggest thing for me right now is setting that mindset and intention. My focus right now is my arm. How do I get my arm back to hopefully what it was before, maybe stronger, maybe it won't be as strong, but how do I get it back to 100% of whatever it will be for the rest of my life? That's my focus right now. I am going to attack this rehab and recovery as strenuously as I would a powerlifting meet. My job right now is to get my arm back, at least physically. And also what this does is, I'm not going to be training as heavy for a little bit. I'm not going to be training as intensely. I'm not worried about hopping on the platform. I'm not worried about my next meet. I don't know when that's going to be. I will be back. That much I can promise. It's a scary thing to not know the future, but thinking about, okay, what can I control right now? I can make sure that I am improving as a person and as a partner. There's less focus on training, less time needed for that, which is great. So it's just shifting that in focus, shifting my intention, taking action on the things that I need to take action on, which is those things in my life that have been pushed down because, there's all these competing priorities in my life and things like that. So making sure that I refocus and put what's most importantly in my life, making my relationship the most important thing, making my business one of the most important things, making sure that I dive into that and just focusing on what can I do right now? I think that question of who am I is a huge one because I identify a lot with my physical abilities and my strength and what I can do in the gym. So it's almost a re-identification process of myself, rediscovering who am I without this. And like I said, it's not gone forever. It will never be gone forever. That's not the way I operate. That's not the way life works. Like you will come back in whatever capacity and I will fight to be back in the best capacity that I can possibly be. But right now, I don't know what that is. So it's focusing on what is most important in your life. What are you? Who are you? I am a partner. I am a human being. I am a business owner. I am a coach. I am all of those things before I even am a lifter. I'm those things a lot because I was a lifter and I am a lifter. That has helped me a ton, but it doesn't define me. Overcoming my body dysmorphia over time, it was like I was identifying with what I looked like. Now I'm identifying with what I can do. So how do I make that mental adjustment to I'm not just what I can do physically, I'm what I can do for others, what I can do for the people that are important to me, how I can support the people that support me. I've gotten so much support and I'm so appreciative of it. I don't know what the road back is going to be, but I know that, like I said, I will be back. I will attack this. I will learn from it. A lot of people say, why didn't you, address the elbow before the meet when it was, hurting you? And it's like, I did. I tried to do some certain things. On that day, it felt pretty good. It bothered me a little bit at times, but for the most part, it felt pretty good. My elbow would hurt when I pressed more than when I would pull. I can deadlift 600 pounds. My biceps feel great because I know how to deadlift. A lot of people will tear their bicep on a deadlift. I did 600 pounds and, I was able to bench press 325 and it didn't really hurt too bad. It bothered me a little bit, but like I said, I've had this tendonitis for a while. It's okay. Then I go out and do this chin up and it tears my bicep. Could I have addressed it? Yeah, probably. Could I have changed the attempts that I made? Yeah, probably. But you can't operate in fear, especially when you have high goals. I learned this playing football my whole life. I tore my ACL, came back and was able to still play. The second that you start playing or lifting with fear, that's where you make mistakes, tense up, and end up getting injured. There were a ton of factors that lead me to where I'm at right now. I cut down weight significantly for this meet. I was dehydrated. I was a little bit depleted. I was sleep deprived. I was all of these things. And I didn't address that the day before enough. After I weighed in, I did not drink enough water. I didn't get a great night's sleep the night before the meet. I didn't eat the healthiest options that I could have eaten. I didn't eat enough. I went out and PR'd 3 lifts, did 9 pretty heavy lifts. Prior to this, I was super exhausted. I was not drinking enough water that day. I didn't eat the right foods that day. All of these things came together to create the space for this injury to occur. There's not one thing I can point to. It's just, how do I make it better going forward? How do I learn from this? How do I learn my body better when something is hurting, getting it addressed right away? And having a more concentrated plan to address it, making sure that all those other things, the recovery, the nutrition, the sleep, the hydration, are all on point going into a serious event. I will say I'll never do a strong lifting event like this ever again. I like powerlifting too much to pull back on it, but this event was too long. It's too much work. I didn't plan it out properly because I was like, I only care about squat, bench, and deadlift, and the other lifts will be whatever. But obviously that turned out to be the wrong mindset. So I just won't put myself in that position again. But like I said, I will be back. I will attack this rehab. You guys will learn a lot. I will be able to create as much as I can from this. And for the time being, it's time to refocus, reset, and focus on what's the most important things in my life. And that's going to be my focus. Once I have a game plan for this arm, I can figure out how to work that into my life and refocus, reset, and get everything accomplished. That's also kind of part of doing this podcast, is refocusing, resetting as a business owner and as a coach to bring you this. Even though today I didn't want to do this. I'm not in a fitness talking mood today. I'm a coach. I love fitness. I love strength. I love all this stuff more than anything. But when something like this happens, it puts you in a weird place of, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to think about it. I just want to do other stuff. But that's also not an option. I need to continue to push myself and do hard things and use the time that I have to do something good with this and provide value. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm bringing back the Lifting Cues podcast. I really hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. Like I said, check out fifthpowerfitness.com. Sign up for my free guides. Sign up for the newsletter that will be coming out Fifth Power Fridays that will be detailing all of this right here. Follow me on Instagram at CoachQ_fitness. Check out Coach Q on Facebook. I look forward to providing you more of this content, bringing back the Lifting Cues podcast to give you all the cues that you need to take your fitness, your strength, your nutrition, everything to the next level. And, make sure you drop your questions in my inbox. Send me a DM, reply to my stories, ask me a question that can be answered on the podcast. Like I said, this is the Lifting Cues podcast. I'm not just giving you cues. I want to answer your cues. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the Lifting Cues podcast, brought to you by Fifth Power Fitness. I'll see you next week.